Hey there, guys. This is Miss Thomas. This recorded lesson will be for A Day as well as B Day students on Friday, October the 8th. October the 9th. We're getting ready to read The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. It's a legend, so therefore it is fiction. So we're going to spend today looking at what exactly is a legend, also known as a myth. I'm going to read an article and I ask you to read it along with me. Then you're going to, we're going to look at this image down here that's going to go over, well, maybe we're not. It's going to go over some information about exactly what is the history of Halloween. Then you're going to watch a video about the history of jack-o'-lanterns, and then you're going to create in your notebook a Venn diagram comparing the difference between this information in the magazine about the history of jack-o'-lantern and this information in this video about the history of jack-o'-lanterns. So let's get started. All right, what are myths? Okay, and I'm reading a very lower level text today. Well, it's not that much lower level. Okay. We are going to drop it back down. I want it to be short and sweet. Okay. Myths are very old stories. They were first told in the far, far past. Myths emerged long before we kept track of time. They were first told out loud. People would tell the stories to one another. This is how they were passed down from grandparents to parents to children and on and on. Myths have been passed down for thousands of years. Some myths explain where humans and animals come from. Others tell the adventures of humans and gods. Some myths explain why in nature, such as some myths explain events in nature, such as fire or floods. Myths also try to answer big questions. How did the world begin is one such question. Why do people die is another. Almost every culture has its own myths. Those myths tell you how that group of people looks at the world. Some myths are tied to a culture's religion. Take, for example, the Hindu myth of Rama and Sita. And I may have mispronounced that. I apologize if I did. Some view this story as part of their religion. They honor the story on special holidays. Why were myths created? Experts say that myths were made to explain facts of human life. They gave reasons for why people are born and why we die. Myths explain how the world was made too. For example, there are myths that tell us where storms and floods come from. There are myths that explain how fire was invented and why earthquakes happen. The story of Pele is one example of this. Pele was a Hawaiian goddess. She controlled volcanoes and fire. Her stories help people understand parts of nature that were scary, like volcanoes. There are different types of myths. There are different kinds of myths. If you read enough myths, you'll be able to spot them. Creation myths are one type. Pantheon myths and hero myths are two more. Creation myths explain how the world came to be. One example is the Efik origin story. It is from Nigeria. The myth explains how humans first came to Earth. Many myths talk about gods and goddesses. These are sometimes called pantheon myths. Some of the most popular pantheon myths are the stories of the Greek gods of Mount Olympus. Another kind of myth is the hero myth. This myth focuses on those who have special powers. Some perform superhuman actions. They save the world from evil and destruction. Hero myths have characters who are powerful. They are not perfect, though. A good example is the tale of Icarus. He invents wings to fly. Icarus flies too close to the sun, though. The sun's heat melts his wings. He drops back down to earth. Why read myths? You may be wondering, why do we still read myths? Why read such old stories? Well, why not? Myths are full of action. They are exciting to read. They influence popular culture, too. Maybe you have heard of The Lightning Thief. It is a book by Rick Riordan. It follows a young demigod. He is struggling to grow up in the shadow of his dad. His dad happens to be the Greek god Poseidon. Perhaps you've read Marvel comics, or you've watched movies such as Thor Ragnarok. Thor is a Norse god. He appears often in Norse myths. Once you get to know myths, you will find the stories in many places. Myths pop up in comic books and novels. They shape popular movies and TV shows. Myths continue to play a part in how we understand the world around us. So a synonym for the word myth would be legend, okay? And again, these are all works of fiction, okay? All right, so let's go see if this image will work for us now. Come on, come on, come on. Why are you not wanting to work? How about if we try it with Cami? We'll make Miss Thomas log in. Miss Thomas is on her home computer. She doesn't do all this stuff. This is making Miss Thomas nervous. Come on, come on. I just downloaded this image. Well, friends, awkward silence. La-di-da-di-dee, la-di-da-di-do. So while we're waiting on that, just a reminder, we've already explained what a myth is. We're going to look at this image as soon as it'll pop up, and then you're going to watch this video. Then you're going to do a Venn diagram explaining the difference between the two histories that were given of where jack-o'-lanterns come from. All right, come on, come on, come on. Here we go. Maybe, maybe, maybe. All right, excellent. Would you like to add text? No, thank you. Okay, so this is actually grammar activity just thrown in with some Halloween history. For us, all we're going to do is look at the Halloween history of it, and then maybe you guys and Miss Guy will go in and do the there and there comparison. Okay, so let's look at jack-o'-lanterns. Let's see if I can zoom in. Is there anything more symbolic of Halloween than carving pumpkins? The tradition likely comes from Ireland. Centuries ago, people there carved scary faces into hollowed out turnips or potatoes and placed candles or pieces of burning coal inside. They set their glowing vegetables in windows to scare off wandering spirits. In the 1800s, Irish immigrants brought the tradition to America, where they began using pumpkins instead, probably because they were easier to carve. All right, now we'll go ahead and read these other two pieces just so you have the information, but the only piece you're going to talk about in your Venn diagram is this piece right here about jack-o'-lanterns, okay, the history, okay, and just to have it, here we go. Every Halloween, we put on vampire teeth, superhero capes, wacky wigs, and other form costumes. Where did this tradition originate? Thousands of years ago, Celtic warriors believed that on October 31st, the boundary between the living and the dead disappeared. They wore costumes made of animal skins and animal heads to protect themselves from any spirits that happened to cross their paths. Thankfully, we don't wear animal heads anymore, but we do love to dress up. What do you think the most popular costumes will be this year? And guys, I understand that some of you may not celebrate Halloween. Please just remember that we all need to be reminded to be respectful of everyone and their beliefs, even if it's different from ours. But we're just looking at the history and we're reading a legend, okay? All right, candy corn. As the story goes, a candy maker in Philadelphia named George Renninger invented candy corn in the 1880s. A few years later, the Goelitz Confectionery Company, now the Jelly Belly Candy Company, started producing candy corn and helped make it popular. At the time, many of America's workers were farmers, and candies in the shapes of various vegetables were popular. Fun fact, candy corn used to be called chicken feed because corn was, and still is, fed to chickens. Today, 9 billion pieces of candy corn are produced each year. That's more candy pieces than there are people on earth. Miss Thomas isn't a huge candy corn eater. I'll eat it some, but it's not my favorite. Okay, I'm going to try and change that so you guys can look at that again later if you're interested. Okay, all right, so the next thing you need to do is go watch this video. It's about 3 minutes, and then you're going to do a very simple Venn diagram in your notebook comparing what this image said about the history of jack-o'-lanterns. Don't worry about costumes or candy corn. And then what this video says about the history of jack-o'-lanterns. Okay, then take a picture of your work and upload it here in Google Classroom. And again, make sure you do that Venn diagram in your notebook. All right, guys.